Okay. All right. All right. All right. Well, as I say all the time, it's not ESPN's 30 for 30, but it is my 98 for 98. The 98 seasons of the New York Football Giants I'm trying to get it in 98 days. I'm probably not going to get it done in 98 days. I'm trying to get it done before the beginning of the regular season, which starts obviously in, early, whatever, mid-September. So I should have the 98 seasons of the New York Giants done before the beginning of the football season starts. But we're forging ahead. We're actually it is close to to get into the 1940s. Ooh. We're at the 1939 season, which just happened to be the 15th season in the history of the New York Football Giants. Obviously, the NFL started in 1920. Giants started in 1925. So if it's the 15th season for the Giants, it's the 20th season in the history of the NFL. Giants had another very, very, very good season. A lot of things, a lot of similarities to the past few years and all of that. So we're going to get over that. We're going to go over that in a bit here. But the 1939 NFL draft, it was the fourth draft, started in 1936. The first one was in Philadelphia. Second one was in New York. Third one was in Chicago. This one came back to New York. Go figure. Let's see here. The 1939 NFL draft was held on December 9th, 1938 at the New Yorker Hotel in New York City, New York. With the first overall pick of the draft, the Chicago Cardinals selected center. Oh, yeah. Center Charles Aldrich from TCU. Just to kind of show you how bad things were for, actually, there was the Pittsburgh Pirates, but soon to become the Pittsburgh Steelers. But it's like the Chicago Bears traded with the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Pittsburgh Pirates were supposed to have the second overall pick. The Chicago Bears traded with them. And so the Bears in the first round had two picks. It's like the rich getting richer. The Bears were a very good team. And this is what made the Bears really good throughout the 40s. Really good. Was so they traded for with the Pittsburgh Pirates for the second overall pick, and they selected Sid Luckman, the quarterback from Columbia. He was a Hall of Famer, one of the one of the better quarterbacks of all time. I mean, it's a different era and all of that, but he was a Hall of Famer, led them to many championship. That was a great trade. The Pirates could have used Sid Luckman, but it's like the rich got richer and the poor got poor. I mean, the Pirates just stunk, and they still stunk. So, but the first round, let's see here. The Giants took Walt Nielsen, a back from Arizona. Now, it's funny because the way they did it back then, wow, my goodness gracious, how many rounds do we have here? 22 rounds. Wow. That's a whole lot of rounds. All right. But what they did, was they took the pretty much like the crappier teams, like the bottom five teams. Now, the way it worked out, like the top teams from the year before, it looks like they picked in the first round. Then they had round number 2, and then they had round 2, the crappier teams from the year before, which would have been the Pirates, the Cardinals, the Rams, the Eagles, and the Dodgers. Those are the worst teams from the year before. They were the only 5 teams to select in round 2. So then when round 3 rolled around, then the Giants selected. So, like, say the Chicago Cardinals. The Chicago Cardinals had, by pick 16, the Chicago Cardinals had 3 picks already. There's the third pick 16. The Giants didn't get their second pick till number 25 overall. That just goes to show you. And then in round 4, the same thing happened. Chicago Cardinals got another. The crappy 5 teams got picks in round 4. The top 5 teams from the year before didn't get picked. So the Giants didn't get their third pick to round 5. So basically, the Cardinals had 5 picks by number 31. The Giants got their third pick at number 40. I mean, so they really, I guess, we're trying to balance it out by getting the crappier teams with more picks. So finally, in round 5, so there was, what was it? Rounds 2 and 4. The worst teams from the year before got an extra draft pick. So the Giants, let's see, in round 3, the Giants had John Chicky Meow, looks like a blocking back. Go figure, from Pittsburgh. Round 5, the Giants selected Don Willis, a back from Clemson. Round 6, the Giants took Jerry Guinea, a guard from Santa Clara. Round 7, the Giants took Lloyd Woodell, a center from Arkansas. Round 8, the Giants took Pete Zagar, a tackle from Stanford. I'll do a round 10. So we got round 9, the Giants took Bob Mills, a tackle from Nebraska. And in round 10, the Giants took Tom Roberts, a tackle from DePaul. But there was a lot of rounds. But this was the 4th NFL draft in the history. So weren't many Hall of Famers. It was not a banner draft. It looked like it was just the one Hall of Famer. Was that Sid Luckman? Sid Luckman was the only Hall of Famer in this whole draft class. Not a boatload of phenomenal players coming out. Wow, go figure. So the Giants. So that's the draft. All right. So the NFL 1939 NFL season. 1939 NFL season was the 20th. Remember, the Giants, the 15th season for the Giants, the 20th for the NFL, 20th NFL regular season of the National Football League. Before this season, the NFL president, Joseph Carr, died, and Carl Stork was named to replace him. An NFL game was televised for the first time when NBC broadcast the October 22nd Philadelphia Eagles at Brooklyn Dodgers game at Ebbets Field in Brooklyn. The Dodgers won 23-14. The experimental broadcast was broadcast only to viewers in New York and Albany. Regular broadcasting of NFL games would not begin until 1951. The season ended with the Green Bay Packers and the New York Giants in the NFL championship game. Then it says the draft. The 1939 NFL draft was held on December 9th, 1938 at New York City's New Yorker Hotel. Well, I said with the first pick, the Chicago Cardinals selected a center from TCU. Major rule changes. The penalty for an ineligible receiver who touches a forward pass is 15 yards and a loss of down. The penalty for an ineligible receiver who is downfield prior to a forward pass being thrown is 15 yards and a loss of down. And if a kickoff goes out of bounds after only being touched by members of the receiving team takes possession of the ball at that inbound spot. Okay, there you go. Once again, we had the same amount of teams. They all played 11 games. We had 10 teams, the same 10 teams from the year before. Right, so we had the 2 divisions, right? We had the Eastern Division and the Western Division. Now the Giants, and in the Eastern Division was the Giants, the Washington Redskins, the Brooklyn Dodgers, the Pittsburgh Pirates, and the Philadelphia Eagles. In the Western Division, we had the Green Bay Packers, the Chicago Bears, the Detroit Lions, the Cleveland Rams, and the Chicago Cardinals. The Cardinals finished, even with all those draft picks the Cardinals had, they still finished 1-10. 1-10. Wow. The Giants had the best defense in the NFL. They only gave up 85 points. They had a decent offense. Let's see. Sammy Ball and the Washington Redskins led the league. Looks like I'm sorry. They led the Eastern Division with 242 points scored. The Chicago Bears, with their newly acquired Sid Luckman at quarterback, they led the league with 298 points scored. But the Giants had the best defense in all football. They only gave up 85 points. Unfortunately, was their defense. Well, it wasn't their defense that did them in the championship game, because they had 6 interceptions. They threw 6 interceptions in the championship game, so that didn't help them. But the division races, though both the Giants and the Packers finished a game ahead of their closest division rivals, both clinched their divisions on December 3rd, the final day of the 11-game regular season. New York Giants and the Washington Redskins had played to a 0-0 tie earlier in the season, and both had 8-1-1 records when they met at New York's Polo Ground before a crowd of 62,404. The Giants did not reach the end zone, but the 3 field goals they kicked were enough for a 9-7 win and a division title. Now, this is the 4th season in a row, 4, where the final game of the season, the New York Football Giants at home played the Washington Redskins. Well, actually, 1936, it was the Boston Redskins. 1937, 38, and 39, it was the Washington Redskins. But the odd thing was those 4 seasons, 36, 37, 38, and 39, all 4 seasons, the final game of the season, it was the Redskins came to play the Giants at the Polo Grounds. All 4 had the division title on the line. Whoever won the game, or there was a couple instances, like last year, I think if the Giants tied or won, they won the division. But basically, whatever team won the game, they won the division. And this was the same. They both came in with 8-1-1 records. The Redskins and the Giants. Whoever won the final game of the season for the 4th straight season went on to the championship game. So therefore, in 1936, the Redskins won. The Boston Redskins won 14-0. 1937, the Washington Redskins won 49-14. Now, this was at the Polo Grounds. So the Washington Redskins came into the Polo Grounds and won 49-14. 1938, the Washington Redskins came to town and played the Giants. The Giants won 36-0. And this year, the Giants, once again, the Washington Redskins came in the final game of the season at the Polo Grounds. The Washington Redskins, the Giants won 9-7. The Giants had grand total of 164 yards. Washington had 202 yards. Washington did have 4 turnovers, though. I'm sure that didn't help them at all. But once again, it's weird how the final game every year came down to the final game of the season with the Giants and the Redskins to see who would wind up going to the championship game. The Western Division race was between the Lions, the Bears, and the Packers. Detroit was unbeaten after 4 games, but on October 22nd, Green Bay beat them 26-7 to give both teams records of 4-1-0. The same day, the 4-1 Bears lost 13-16 to the Giants to fall to 4-2. In Week 9, which was November 5th, the Lions beat the Giants 18-14. The Giants had the hardest time beating the Lions. The hardest time beating the Lions. They were the Portsmouth Spartans, and in 1934 they became the Detroit Lions. But the Giants had the hardest time beating the Portsmouth Spartans / Detroit Lions. While the Bears beat the Packers 30-7, giving Detroit the lead at 6-1-0 with 4 games left. And Detroit lost the final 4 games of the season. Wow. The next week, November 12th, the Bears beat the Lions 23-13, and the Packers beat the Eagles 23-16, tying Detroit and Green Bay at 6-2-0. Half a game lead over the 6-3-0 Bears. On November 19th, the Lions lost to the Rams. 14-3, while the Packers and the Bears both won. On November 26th, the Bears closed their season at 8-3 after a 48-7 win over the Cardinals, who were 1-10. Oh, my goodness. While the Packers edged the Rams 7-6. Wow. To reach 8-2-0. Green Bay was behind 7-3 at halftime in its season ender at Detroit, and a loss would have forced a playoff for the Western Division. But Carl Hinkle's touchdown in the final quarter gave the Packers a 12-7 win and the division title. Wow. A close one. Let's see, the league leaders. Davey O'Brien, the league leaders. Oh, it's up there, Teddy. Portsmouth was Pitt metro area. Portsmouth moved north to secure Steeler ticket sales. Well, I mean, it was the Pittsburgh Pirates, and then they became the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I mean, they were not very good at all back then. I mean, the Pittsburgh Pirates. Oh my goodness, that was funny. Oh, let's see. Davey O'Brien was the passing leader. He was from the Philadelphia Eagles. He had 1,324 yards passing. That was a lot. I mean, obviously it doesn't sound like a lot nowadays, but back then that was a lot of passing yards. Bill Osmanski from the Chicago Bears led the league in rushing with 699 yards. Don Hudson, the Hall of Famer himself, was the receiving leader. He had 846 yards receiving for the Green Bay Packers. Parker Hall, a halfback, wow, jeez, from Cleveland, was named the most valuable player of the league. So the Giants finished 9-1-1. They scored 168 points and only gave up 85. So I mean, they had a very, very good season. I mean, very good. Ed Danowski once again was their quarterback. They didn't really set the world on fire with passing. And I mean, Ed Danowski, their quarterback, he had 3 touchdown passes through 6 interceptions. So the Giants on the season had 8 touchdown passes. But check this out. I mean, how different is this? How shows you how the times are changing. The Giants, had 8 touchdown passes and 11 interceptions. That was kind of commonplace back then, for the most part, to have more interceptions than touchdown passes back then. But I mean, just to go to show you how times are changing, right? The Giants would die for this. Their defense, gave up 3 touchdown passes all season. Okay, I mean, that's really, really good. That's phenomenal. But they got 35 interceptions. Their defense got 35 interceptions. The other team's opponent team's interception rate was almost 16%. Almost 16% of the opponent's team's passes were intercepted. That is phenomenal. 35 interceptions they got. Let's see, what do we got here? Tuffy Lemons led the league, the Giants with 429 rushing yards. Len Barnum was second with 237. Hank Soar had 158 rushing yards. Kink Richards had 117. The Giants had, what did they have? They had 9 rushing touchdowns. They only gave up 5. So the Giants defense, they must have had, let's see, they had, what do they got? They had 1 interception return for a touchdown. So they didn't have a ton of touchdowns. Did not have a ton of kicking here. Okay, well, one thing was for the Giants, they did kick. They tried 32 field goals. They made 14 of them. The field goal percentage was about 44%. They did kick all their extra points. They were 18 for 18 on extra point tries, but they were 14 out of 32 on field goals. So the Giants started the season off once again, as always. All right, the Giants started they started on the road. Usually it was anywhere from 2 to the first 4 games was on the road because they shared the Polo Grounds with the New York Giants baseball team. So this season was no different. The first 3 games of the season were all on the road. The first home game wasn't until October 15th. So basically what they did is, I guess, they didn't want to play in September. And I guess that they wanted to make sure, I'm imagining, that if the Giants, the baseball team, made it to the World Series, the World Series would be over with by the time the Giants started playing their home games. Because I guess they didn't want to obviously chew the field up, because It's not the way it is nowadays where they can just resod a field and everything's just hunky-dory. It's not the way it was back then. You chewed the field up. The field was pretty much screwed up. So the first 3 games were on the road. The first game of the season was on September 24th. They played in Philadelphia. They beat the Eagles 13-3 to start off 1-0. Then the second game of the season, they played in Washington, and that was that the aforementioned. They played to a 0-0 tie. The Giants had a grand total of 5 first downs in the game. They had 74 yards of total offense. Not too impressive. So the third game of the season, they played the Pittsburgh Pirates on Sunday, October 8th. Okay, and they won that game 14-7 to go to 2-0-1. The fourth game of the season, the Giants played the Philadelphia Eagles. So in the first 4 games, they played the Eagles 2 times. They on October 15th, they won. It was the first home game. They won 27-10 to go to 3-0-1. The following week, the Chicago Bears came to town. On October 22nd, the Giants would prevail 16-13. And they said they were 4-0-1 after 5 games. The following week, on October 29th, the Giants played in Brooklyn, and they won 7-6. Now, it's a little odd because the Giants usually played the Brooklyn Dodgers on Thanksgiving in Brooklyn. They didn't play on Thanksgiving this year, which is odd. It's like the first year I can remember almost period that the Giants did not play on Thanksgiving. So 1939 is that. I'd have to go back and check, but I can remember almost every other Thanksgiving the Giants playing on Thanksgiving. So 1939, the Giants did not play on Thanksgiving. The Giants almost every other year before this played on Thanksgiving. Not only did they play on Thanksgiving, they played on the road. And not only played on the road, but they played on the road against a team from New York. And usually it was the Brooklyn Dodgers the past few years. But this year they did not. This year they played at Brooklyn. It was on Sunday, October 29th. They won 7-6 to push their record to 5-0-1. The following week, all right, on November 5th is when they played at Detroit. For whatever, they just had the hardest time beating the Detroit Lions and the Portsmouth Spartans. Had the hardest time beating them. So they played in Detroit. They lost 18-14. And then apparently after the Lions won this game, that they lost their last 4 games of the season. So they beat the Giants, and then they lost every other game after that. The following week, on Sunday, November 12th, the Giants had the Chicago Cardinals come to play in the Polo Grounds. The Giants won 17-7. The Giants' record was 6-1-1. Then the following week, the Giants played at home once again. Let's see, what do we got? 1, 2. The Giants had 6 games at home, 5 games on the road. The final 4 games of the season, they played at home. So let's see, week number 9, they played on Sunday, November 19th at home against the Pittsburgh Pirates. They won 23-7. The second to last game of the season, they played the Brooklyn Dodgers on Sunday, November 26th. So they did not play on Thanksgiving. They won 28-7 and to push their record to 8-1-1. Then once again, the final game of the season, right? The Washington Redskins came to play the Giants at the Polo Grounds on Sunday, December 3rd. And whoever won this game would have won the division. Ward Cuff kicked a 40-yard field goal in the first quarter. Ken Strong kicked a 19-yard field goal in the second quarter. The third quarter, Ward Cuff kicked a 15-yard field goal to put the Giants up 9-0. And in the fourth quarter, Bob Masterson got a 20-yard pass from Frankie Filchak. And Bob Masterson kicked the extra point to make it 9-7. And the Giants held on in front of a crowd of over 62,000 people, which was an enormous amount of people back then. They said, I mean, the Redskins had 4 turnovers. They had 4 interceptions. So, I mean, that's sure that hurt them. But this is the 4th straight season that the Giants and the Redskins played. Final game of the season in New York at the Polo Grounds, and decided who wound up winning the division and who wound up going to the championship game. That the Redskins won in 36 and 37. So the Redskins went to the championship games in 36 and 37. The Giants won the final game and therefore the division in 1938 and 39. So the 38 and 39, the Giants went to the championship game. And this is, once again, this is the back-to-back playing the Packers. 1938, the Giants played the Packers at the Polo Grounds, New York, and they won 23-17. So this time, the following season, the Western Division had the home field advantage in the championship game. And this time the Packers won 27-0. Now, the Western Division always had home field advantage in the odd numbered years, 1933, 35, 37, 39. The Eastern Division had the home field advantage in the even number years, 1934, 1936, 1938, and so on. So since it was an odd number year, the Western Division was the home team, and the Green Bay Packers were the home team, and they wound up winning 27-0. The turnovers did the Giants in. The Packers were obviously the better team this day, without question. But the Giants with 6 turnovers. The Giants got down around like the 8-yard line one time, and after they got down to about the 8, I wasn't sure if it was the next play or the 2 plays later, but they threw an interception and that killed the drive. It was only 7-0 at halftime, so they had a chance. But in the third quarter, the Packers put up 10 points. The fourth quarter, the Packers put up 10 points, and the game was over with by them. But the 1939 NFL Championship game. All right. 1939 NFL Championship game was the 7th league championship game of the National Football League, held on December 10th inside the Milwaukee Mile, located at Wisconsin State Fair Park in West Allis, Wisconsin, a suburb of Milwaukee. Go figure, huh? The 9-1-1 New York Giants, the defending champions, played the Western Division champion Green Bay Packers, who were 9-2. The teams had met in the previous year's title game in New York City, which the Giants won by 6 points, 23-17. But they did not play each other during the 1939 regular season, which was a bit odd because from what I can always remember, they always seemed to play each other every year. But this year they did not. For the title game in Wisconsin, the Packers were favored by 10 points. The host Packers scored a touchdown in the first quarter and led 7-0 at halftime. They dominated in the second half. They scored 10 points in the third quarter, 10 points in the fourth quarter, and secured their 5th title. Let's say the Packers won. They won the titles in 1936, 1939. They won in 1929, 30, and 31. So this was their 5th overall title. Now, 29, 30, and 31, there was no championship game. They had the best winning percentage at the end of the season. So they were the first team to three-peat. They three-peated in 29, 30, and 31. They also did it again in 65, 66, and 67. So the Packers three-peated 2 times. So, but this was their 5th overall championship. Let's say, which there was their 5th title, 2 more than any other franchise. The Giants had 3 at the time, and they won. The Giants won the titles in 27, 34, and 38. So the Giants won this game. The Giants would have had 4 titles, and the Packers would have had 4 titles, but it was not meant to be. Let's see, it was the highest attended sporting event in the Milwaukee area, with 32,379 people showing up, which back then in the Milwaukee area was a lot of people. Let's see, the Green Bay Packers scored in the first quarter to go up 7-0. There was no scoring in the second quarter. In the third quarter, the Packers kicked a 29-yard field goal to go up 10-0. Then this kind of put the game away pretty much. Joe Law's 31-yard pass to Cecil Isbell put the Packers up 17-0. Now, back then, obviously 17-0 is 3. It is 3 scores nowadays too. But I mean, if you're having a hard time getting anything going and you're down 17-0 going into the fourth quarter, it's it's pretty much good night, Irene. The 31-yard pass that the Packers had from Joe Laws, a 31-yard pass. Joe Laws got it from Cecil Isbell. Cecil Isbell it looked like he faked a handoff and he turned around like he was like pretending like he didn't have the ball, I guess, or whatever. And he was just kind of like, and the Giants kind of rushed in on him. And Cecil Isbell, before he got hit, he launched his pass down the field to Joe Laws. And Joe Laws, I don't know if the defense bid on it and they thought it was like a running play. But when the pass got to Joe Laws, he was like 5 or 6 yards behind the closest Giant. And he caught the ball. The ball was just floated down in his hands, caught it, and walked in. It was like about 5-6 yards from the end zone. Walked in untouched. 17-0 with the extra point. Pretty much at that time, pretty much the game was over. The Giants threw 26 passes. They completed 9. They had 6 interceptions. They had, what do they have? They gained 56 yards on the ground. So they couldn't run the ball. They couldn't pass the ball. The Packers had 131 yards rushing. Interestingly enough, the Packers threw 10 passes. Everyone was complete. 7 of them went to the Packers. 3 of them went to the Giants. So the Packers did not throw an incomplete pass. They threw 3 interceptions and 7 completed balls to their own players. So, I mean, they did a phenomenal job overall. The Giants looked like they only threatened the one time, and which was, I believe, in the second quarter. It looked like it was. And, I mean, with the interceptions that they wound up having, they just, took them out of the game. But, I mean, all in all, I mean, as I said, the Giants, wound up, 9-1-1. They had the best defense in all of football. Their offense wasn't super spectacular, but, only giving up 85 points in 11 games. They gave up less than 8 points per game. Basically, they gave up like a touchdown a game. I mean, having a good defense, So they had, once again, another really good, solid season by the New York Giants. Unfortunately, they failed in the championship game. Now, that's going to become a familiar theme as we go along because, unfortunately, after the 1938 championship game, the Giants won. Right, gave them their 3rd title. Now, if we can count along here, 10, it's 12, right? Okay. From 1939 to the last playoff / championship game, which the Giants were in 1963. So from 39 to 63, the New York Giants were in 12 playoff / championship games. They won 1. They lost in 39, the championship game. They lost in 41, the championship game. They lost in 43 in a playoff to see who go to the championship game. They lost in the championship game in 44. They lost the championship game in 48. They lost in a playoff game to the Cleveland Browns in 1950 to see who would go to the championship game. They won in 1956. Okay, so that was their 1 victory. They lost in the championship game 1958. They lost in the championship game 1959. They lost in the championship game in 61, 62, and 63. So, unfortunately, I mean, they did very well from 1933, which was the first championship game ever. Pretty much, they had 2 divisions. Best 2 teams played in the championship game. So that was the first official championship game. It's 1933. So from 1933 to 1938, the Giants won 4 championship games. They were 2-2. They beat the Bears. They beat the Packers. They lost to the Bears, and they lost to the Lions. So they were 2-2. Unfortunately, as I said, after that, after 1938, the Giants won 12 playoff and championship games. 12. And they won 1. They were 1-11. So So meaning that the Giants at the end of the seasons, if they ever got into the playoffs and all that, they fell on hard times. But it also meant that there was a lot of good football for the New York Giants ahead. 1940, they would not make, obviously they didn't make it to the championship game. That was the Redskins. But, heading into the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, there was still a lot of good New York Giant teams. They just fell a little bit short when it came as far to the championship game. But we're heading into the 1940s. So tomorrow night, I'll be back and I'll do the 1940 season for the New York Giants, which just happened to be the 16th season in the history of the New York Giants. I'll see you then.